Podcast City Network.
Welcome. This is the Rip Griffin Show podcast, a baseball podcast for baseball fans of all ages. Now, here's your host, Rip Griffin.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Rip Griffin Show. This is episode number 80, so we are moving along this year. And joining me tonight is Ben Abel from Overtime Heroics. Ben, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Rip. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm glad you were able to come on and talk a little baseball. I did not realize that it was the NFL draft tonight. So, but that's okay. We're not going to talk about football. We're going to talk about baseball. That's what we're going to talk about. So,
just going to say, Rip, that, maybe I'm one of those fans. Maybe people think they're going to trash me. Sometimes I turn the NFL off in the off season. I don't know why. This year, there's so much news in NFL, MLB, NHL, right? And the NFL is probably my third sport on the list after hockey and then baseball. And hockey and baseball are tied pretty close. But even with the draft, I was like, once the Super Bowl's done, I'm like, kind of like moving on to a different sport, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was really big into the draft. And for some reason, it just kind of lost its appeal and its luster to me. And I'll kind of go through maybe tomorrow, check out, see which team, drafted who. One of my, I really don't have a favorite team, to be honest. The Texans they're kind of going downhill on all their turmoil and offseason stuff. So I really get turned off on the NFL. College football, I will watch. Penn State's one of my favorite schools to watch in football wise. So. But, baseball is the big thing for me. I thoroughly enjoy watching it and playing it and used to play it. I can't play anymore. Kind of passed my prime on that one. But one of the things I kind of wanted to touch on tonight is the Madison Bumgarner. We'll kind of just jump right into the show here. His no-hitter, which was the first time in his career that he's actually gone through a no-hitter. He's come close a couple of times. He's taken some into the 7th and 8th inning, maybe a couple one-hitters here and there, but never a no-hitter. But one of the things that makes this so unique and so almost not really controversial, but because of the rule, is that this game was a 7-inning doubleheader.
Right.
And Rob Manfred came out last season and said, to speed up the game, we're going to go with these 7-inning doubleheaders to kind of, get the games in, get them done, so these guys aren't, playing for so long. And the rule is with a doubleheader, with a no-hitter, is it has to be 9 innings. A pitcher or pitchers, because we have had combined no-hitters.
Combined no-hitters,
yeah. It has to be it has to be 9 innings to be classified as an official no-hitter. Now, Major League Baseball is saying that this is going to be an unofficial, and I just don't agree with it. What are your thoughts on this?
It's really interesting. I was reading stuff today on it, Rippin'. It's like, well, it's not a no-hitter. Well, it is a no-hitter. You do a Google search. You follow a lot of baseball writers. You read the Overtime Heroic stuff that we put out, and it's. Some people say it is, some people say it isn't. Now, I would argue for and against, and in the sense that from Madison Bumgarner's perspective, he even said, basically I'm just playing the game. I pitched 7 innings. I didn't allow any hits. That's 21 outs, right? And it's Major League Baseball says it's unofficial, yet the game has said, or Major League Baseball has said, we're going to run games this way with a 7-inning doubleheader. So then, how is it not a no-hitter if that's the game they're playing, even though it's not 9 innings? That's one way that I look at it. Right. The other thing is, and I read some stuff on it today, and just, from following the game, well, it's not 9 innings, and he didn't get 27 outs, and it's tougher to get the last 6 outs.
Right. And that's what makes it.
So there's compelling arguments on both sides. Right.
Exactly. And it's just one of those things that, to throw a no-hitter regardless is tough to do.
It is.
In this game, because there's the competition, and we talk about the analytics of the game, and you get to that second and third time through that lineup, it makes it harder for the pitcher to be successful. And whether or not it's 9 innings, 7 innings, it needs to be classified as an official no-hitter, because it's not his fault that the rule states that this is what's going to happen when a doubleheader is played. I mean, he did what he was supposed to. And I really think that, we need to get back to the traditional part of the doubleheader and go back to 9 innings. I agree it's a speed thing, but what is Major League Baseball going to do now if this actually stays into place? There's going to have to be some sort of amendment, at least in my mind, to get these guys, if it happens, because there was a thing that we didn't know if this was going to happen, and I think baseball kind of just didn't anticipate it, and it did, and now they're kind of left in limbo to figure out what to do to make this official. And I think it should be official. I think we would probably both agree on that.
Yeah, and it's just as I was reading some interesting stuff here and looking at some research. In 1991, Commissioner Fay Vincent said, they had a statistical accuracy committee on this, and it said it's got to be 9 innings. So it's a 30-year-old thing. It's 2021. The rules have changed if you mandated the game this way, or that's the way you're going to run the game. Are you going to change that rule if it's 30 years old, or are you just going to say, I'm not saying either way here. I always try to provide something I think that's a little more objective and, some of the stats, right? And I read that and I go, well, Major League Baseball said this is what they're going to do. So are you going to change it, or are you just going to say, we're just going to make exceptions sometimes?
Yeah, that's kind of where this is headed. Is they pick and choose which aspects of the game they want to classify as official and which ones they don't, and that's the thing that's frustrating, because there's really and that's just not with this scenario right now with Madison Bumgarner and his no-hitter. It's throughout the whole course of baseball. It's whether it's the sign stealing scandal, or umpires that have been lacked consistency this year. There's just various different aspects of the game that Major League Baseball will rule on one thing but not on another, and they kind of almost similar basically, right? And it's frustrating as a fan, and plus
there's no consistency of the game, even though you're changing the rules and you've implemented the stuff in 2020 that you implemented, and we had a 60-game season, but a 60-game season is not valid, and it's not a valid World Series. But then you keep making these rule changes, and it's like, okay. And it's like, I read that, and I've looked at, we're trying to attack non-baseball fans. So the non-baseball fans say, maybe, okay. But the traditionalists, or the people who follow it a long time, like you and I, go, well, the game is fine the way it was. Or how do you change the game? And how do you bring in casual fans? Or do you care about casual fans, and the regular or the diehards are going to watch anyway? Right.
Exactly.
So, like even the designated hitter, look at how much controversy there was last year. Universal DH in 2020, no DH in universal DH in 2021, all this stuff about the CBA. And then you think about how long the DH has been in the American League.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be another thing that Major League Baseball is going to have to try to figure out what they want to do. Because we're with the universal DH last year, and I think it worked out beautifully, to be honest. And and then you've got this year with everything back to normal. I really think we're headed to where it's going to be official 100% in the years to come and seasons to come. It kind of gives guys that are technically classified as designated hitters in the American League. That's their only primary position. Guys like JD Martinez, for example,
from Boston.
Yeah, from Boston. That he was kind of on the talks of free agency and where he might land, and there's only 15 spots that he can possibly go, which are all in the American League.
Right.
Doesn't really give him a whole lot of leverage to pick a team, especially when the other teams have solidified designated hitters like the Twins and Nelson Cruz, or even your Angels, Shohei Ohtani, and possibly mixing in with Albert Pujols as well. So it doesn't really give. I mean, it doesn't give Martinez a chance to explore other options, and especially in the National League. But I think that's where we're headed eventually. Is the designated hitter will be universal throughout both leagues. I know myself and maybe some other fans will probably, enjoy it and like it and want to see it. So,
but it's an interesting thing because I always thought about the designated hitter when I first started watching baseball and learning about baseball. And I always wondered how in the American League and the National League and the World Series, correct me if I'm wrong, in the American League parks, the DH can play. In the National League park, they cannot. Correct? Is that how it works now? Because I always saw it as if you could have a DH in an American League park in the World Series, or can you? Because I always looked at it like it's an advantage, like for the American League team, and then you take that advantage away, and especially if a DH is an integral part of that team, and they're a great hitter. And I think about a guy like Edgar Martinez in Seattle. Right? Yeah. Or I think about how the DH gets leveraged for any player who isn't well enough to play, or maybe hurt or was hurt, but is a great hitter, and you get to leverage what they bring to you with the bat at the plate.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it's just one of those things. And one of the things that really confused me was, especially with Shohei Ohtani, and when he pitched and hit in that very first, I think he did against Texas.
The Monday night game was the big game because he became the first pitcher since Babe Ruth to start the game while leading the majors in homers. Okay, and for the Angels and Shohei, and I was listening to a podcast on it today about how he doesn't have to even be an awesome pitcher, right? He has to be solid, decent, throw a few innings, but he's a great hitter. So the fact that he can do both. And do what he's done, and the fact that he hasn't really played, I wouldn't say played solidly, hasn't really had a start to a season or played a full season since 2018 because of injuries.
Right.
So it's really tough with these rule changes. It's like, okay, and you see the extra innings and the guy on second base, and I'm like, sometimes you watch baseball games and they drag on several innings.
Oh yeah,
and it's like and it's just like, so what, right? Like it's like we went in 15 innings or something, right?
Yeah,
people are bored in the 10th, 11th, and 12th innings watching like 3 up and 3 down kind of baseball. Right?
Yeah, and that's the game though. It kind of, once you get into those extra innings, and so you take away the runner on second for a minute, it becomes a game of strategy. It really depends on who has it comes down to your bullpen. Who has the better bullpen coming into the extra innings?
Yeah. And
we're starting to see more and more position players play the game and pitch, which is probably something we saw quite a bit of it last year, just given because of how everything was going down. But we're starting to see more of that this season as well. And it's very interesting dynamic that whether it's maybe question is maybe the rosters need to be expanded to help solidify and your pitching rotation and your bullpen, but then you kind of take away maybe a key bat or two. It's really interesting how these teams are formulating their lineups, because pitching has not been as deep as we've seen it in the past, and pitchers aren't going as long. We're used to seeing them go, 8, 9 inning complete games, and now we're seeing them go in the 5th inning, which is unheard of in the game that we used to watch.
And that strategy, I remember from a couple years back. You remember the idea of the pitcher who was the opener?
Yeah.
1 inning.
Mm-hmm.
And then a long relief or a middle relief guy, or a couple of middle relief guys, and then a closer or not a closer.
Yeah. Yeah. What
is 1 inning, right? Like, like, okay.
Unfortunately, he can't come back later on in the game to help you out if you need him. I mean, that's
right. That's right. He's out of the lineup.
That's just crazy how all of this kind of is starting to. We're seeing a different dynamic in baseball, which is just truly. It's interesting to see, but it's also nerve-wracking at the same time, and it's frustrating.
Well, it's a thing. It's like because of COVID, there's changes and rule changes, and I wish I had a time machine. Sometimes I go back to 1973, 74, 75. Maybe you could find a way to take the pulse or read about how people felt about the DH.
Right.
I mean, I wonder if people then would have the same reaction or what the reaction was. Because I've only ever watched baseball in the time that I've been alive with the DH, the American League. Right. And so It's like, I wonder what people thought, like when the DH first came into being. Like, okay.
It was definitely something different. I grew up watching a lot of National League, so I didn't get a chance to witness the DH until the World Series happened, and then the lineup has changed, and we're like, where's the pitcher? Why is he not batting? And that's where I kind of got introduced into the designated hitter, and of course, being able to watch games or go to games live was always National League. So
that's right. Was that before the Astros moved to the American League?
Mm-hmm. So
exactly.
Yeah, they moved in 2013. That's right.
That's right.
So
I watched the Astros in my younger days just because of Nolan Ryan, or just because of in Canada, obviously where I live, I always watch the Jays, right? Because they're the Canadian team, but the other team was the Expos, so I watch the Expos too, which is National League. Right. Now I don't know if I discriminate National League to American League. I think it's teams. I don't care who, but. Like it's a different brand of baseball. I never really discriminated, I don't think, between the two leagues.
Yeah, I always like having that difference. One team has the advantage in their own, or when the two teams play like an interleague. It's good to see that kind of that kind of leverage and kind of how you strategize, but it's just, I don't know, there's a lot of things that are changing in the game, and it's just some is good, some is not good, and I really think we're headed towards a universal DH. It's just something that
I think it'll be interesting, and it's not gonna, for me, make me that annoyed where I'm not gonna watch the game.
Oh no,
but some people, right? Like they,
I'm done. I don't want to watch anymore. That's kind of their mentality now. But especially with team fan bases that are kind of really jumping off the bandwagon so early here in April. I mean, it's crazy that you see across social media that fan bases are it's April. I mean, these
162
guys
games.
Yeah, these guys are 20, 21, 22 games in right now.
Yeah, right.
And it's. Come on. I can understand, once July comes and, after the All-Star break.
That's just what I was going to say. After the All-Star break, you get into the stretch driver, the dog days of summer, you get to mid-August, and you got till the end of September, and you got pennant races in the National and American League. And that's when I think you really, truly start to see baseball.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And it's the same in the NHL. The season starts, it's 82 games, and you're just like, oh, man. You get to like February, and you're like, okay, well, it's playoffs are in April, Stanley Cup, right? Same thing in baseball. I don't know if it's social media. I see people writing teams off game by game in Facebook groups, and I'm like, played 22 games out of 162.
Yeah.
And teams make it off the All-Star break and forward, and that's it. As long as they're hanging around in contention, right?
Right, exactly. It's just, it's definitely mind-blowing that everybody has maybe we're still, having the effects of a 60-game season and everybody's just
could be.
I don't know. There's no telling. But definitely interesting, Madison Bumgarner. I really think baseball needs to make this official, to be honest. They're calling it an unofficial no-hitter, and the designated hitter rules. There's a lot of things that are changing in baseball that I think we're going to see some rule changes and some amendments to rules, like the no-hitter, for example, that whether it's 7 innings or 9 innings, these guys don't dictate how many innings that the game is played. They just go out there and play the game. So I think Major League Baseball is definitely going to have some work to do come this offseason to kind of rectify a lot of these issues that they didn't think about at the time, but now we're talking about them. So definitely something to keep an eye out there. But kind of want to change gears a little bit here.
Go ahead. Yeah,
and the Rockies have always been a team, especially the last couple off seasons, that just never seemed to want to make moves to get better. They were always more concerned about their bottom line versus improving their team. And it showed. It showed on the field that their star third baseman, Nolan Arenado, is now gone. The possibility of Trevor Story going to be gone.
Right.
So there's a lot of different things that the Rockies are headed down a wrong path. And one of the things that just happened just this week was their former, I'm going to call him now former general manager, Jeff Bridich. He steps down. He resigns as a general manager based on everything that has transpired, which was kind of interesting so early into the season. I mean, it's in April, and he's resigning. I'm surprised that they didn't try to at least stick it out this season, maybe try to make a move come July. But what are your thoughts on him leaving so abruptly?
Well, it's a tough situation for the Rockies, and to trade Arenado's caliber player to St. Louis. And I think people initially, when I was reading about it, were like gung-ho and St. Louis is going to win the NL Central. And I'm like, I've seen it in other sports. I've seen it in baseball. I've seen it in hockey, where a big player acquisition happens in the offseason. The team doesn't necessarily vault into contention or become one of those teams that's hard to beat because of one player. I'm not dissing Arenado at all. I'm saying it's a big move, right? And then sometimes it takes a few seasons. And looking at the Rockies, they had back-to-back playoffs in 2017 and 2018, but since then haven't made it. I mean, I know 2020 was a shortened season, but yeah, it's sort of like, why does he leave? Or is there other stuff that people don't know about? You probably will never hear about it. And just sort of, it sounded like there was a clash between Arenado and Jeff himself, or stuff got leaked in the media. Even though a couple seasons ago they gave him an 8-year, $260 million contract,
right?
Like a huge commitment, right? It's not as big as what Mookie Betts got with the Dodgers or what Mike Trout got, but it's on par with that for that kind of player,
right? Exactly.
And so, it's just like, is he out because of that trade, or is there other issues within the team? And I saw something else about how they spent, where was it? Their free agent signings produced a crisp minus 3.8 FWAR, or for $241 million over the past 5 seasons.
Wow.
Like, that is, talk about like all that money spent and no results.
Nothing.
So maybe he was given the option. Who knows? I mean, was he given the option to either step down or get fired?
I think he was given at the owner's request to resign, which he accepted. But this was just interesting kind of out of the blue because just recently in the last week or so, they were awarded the All-Star game.
Good point. After this whole controversy with
Yeah.
the All-Star game in Atlanta and they move it. And that's a big feather in the Rockies' cap. Like we said on that one show about how many home runs are going to fly out of Coors Field because you're holding the game in Colorado, right? So
right.
Yeah, I don't follow the Rockies quite as much until this came up, and I just think about their division and I think about the Dodgers and the Padres, right?
Right.
And it's like you think about what those two teams are doing, and you got Arizona in that division as well.
You got San Francisco as well, who's doing better than what anybody has thought that they would do.
So far they are.
Right.
They are. Right.
They've got the third best record in the league right now? Or?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'd have to look. But yeah, it's that NL West is the Dodgers and Padres, and the Padres took three of four from them that big weekend series. And I watched that game, one of those games, and I was like, Dodgers were up 7-1.
Yeah.
They lost. And I was like, what? And I was like, oh, okay.
I really think the Padres. Now there's going to be more this later on this season, so we may see how the series turns out with the Padres and the Dodgers. But the Padres are good.
Yeah, they are, and they added a lot in the offseason pitching with Yu Darvish and with Blake Snell, and they signed Tatis, and they've made Gon Machado, and I don't. Like I wrote Dodgers stuff for Overtime Heroics last year, so I'm not biased that I want the Dodgers to win, but I enjoy baseball. One thing I would say about that 4-game series was when I watched those games, I mean, that was great baseball, right? Whether you're just a casual fan or, whether you cheer for one of those teams, I'm like, I have a lot of respect, like for just watching this game. Despite
absolutely.
People's frustrations or the rule changes or whatever else has been going on. If you could just focus on watching those games, you're like, that's a playoff series I'd want to watch.
Oh, definitely. That's going to be, if we can predict it right now, that's exactly how it would set up. Would be, Padres, Dodgers. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be Padres, Dodgers, NLCS because that wouldn't work. But that would make for a, yeah, I know that would be phenomenal though to have those two teams duke it out. Well, I guess it probably could if they were put into two different brackets. So
yeah, I don't know how it's going to work with are they going to do the expanded playoffs this year?
No.
So it's back to
the wild card, the two wild card teams.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that could probably work with if the Dodgers take the division, the Padres are the wild card team. Then you've got your second wild card team, which we'll call it the Mets. So those two would probably play in that 1-game playoff.
Yeah.
And yeah, that could work. That could definitely work. If they're the wild card team, or vice versa, or if the Dodgers become a wild card team. So
I just found it interesting before that when you looked at the Dodgers record and the Padres record, the Dodgers were a number of games above 500, where the Padres were close to 500. Not that that matters, but I thought the Dodgers still. I don't know. I didn't check their record today. When I saw that it was like 15-6 versus 12-11, I was like, oh, that's interesting because it's sort of like there's a bigger discrepancy there with winning percentage. Whether that matters or not, I don't know. But like we said earlier too, it's only April, right? So who knows what's going to happen, right? Exactly. I mean, who knows what happened? The Padres get injuries, the Dodgers get injuries. Who's out for the Dodgers right now? Well, Cody Bellinger's out. Right. So, I mean, that's the 2019 MVP. That's a pretty big piece.
So right now, the West is shaping up. The Giants are actually in first place at 16-9.
25 games in, yeah.
Yes, and the Dodgers are in second at 16-10, and the Padres are third at 14-12.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I don't think the Dodgers and the Giants have played yet. So, definitely.
Yeah, that's.
It's just amazing, especially when you look at these run differentials. The Giants are at plus 24, and the Dodgers are at plus 38, but they're sitting in second place right now. That's just
It's interesting, right? Like, what's going on there? Like you look at only one team, only the Rockies have a below 500 record. So
yeah,
how's it going to play out? Like,
it's just this whole season, just in April, was just completely in. I'm in awe right now because you've got the Yankees sitting at 11-14 right now in last place. You've got the Royals, Kansas City Royals, are sitting in first place at 15-8.
Yep.
And of course, every team in the National League East is either at 500 or below.
Yeah, wow, that's. But and then you look at the NL Central, right? Milwaukee's first, St. Louis, Pittsburgh is ahead of Chicago and Cincinnati, right? Like, it's just a weird league, and I wonder if just the pandemic effect too. Like we didn't see that season like we normally see, and then people have different expectations. And I'm like, oh, now it's back to normal. It's a 162 game season.
Yeah.
Right, and it's 6 months of regular season baseball before the playoffs.
Yeah.
Okay. So what? So sort of like what next, right?
Right.
But back to the Rockies. I mean, what happens to that franchise now? They traded away their star player. They seem to be in all this financial trouble. Their GM is gone. Now what? Are they just really going to bottom out? Or are they going to turn them around? Or are they going to,
I really think they're going to hit. This is essentially a rock bottom for the Rockies right now, and that's not a pun intended, honestly. So
no, I understand what you're saying, but it is a good pun. It's it's because teams bottom out and they don't stay bad forever, right? I mean, it's
right.
So it's an interesting development for sure with them. And I remember following Twitter when Arenado was traded. People were just like, what is going on, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think they need to get their front office together first. They need to restructure that, get a general manager in there that can turn this organization around. Not necessarily at this moment. It's going to be one of those, you've got to build from the ground back up again. And this team has been a contender. This team has been to a World Series. This team has come close to winning a World Series. I see them kind of turning it around. I don't see it being right now, but this is definitely, you're in a West in a very competitive division.
Yeah,
and you have to be able to compete to just.
And they won't. They're last. So it must not feel good to be a Rockies fan, and you got the Dodgers and Padres in front of you, and even the Giants, right? Whether the Giants stay with it or not, I don't know.
Right.
I don't think the Diamondbacks will be that great, but
no.
It's not the Rockies' time right now in the NL West if they got those two teams in front of them.
No. So definitely a lot of interesting news that has come out of the Rockies. Like I mentioned, not just this week. It's been the last couple off seasons, and so I know it's frustrating for Rockies fans, but they will kind of get through this. It's just going to take some time. So
yeah, and maybe this is the culmination of all this last couple off seasons and the bad stuff that was floating around.
Right, absolutely. So we'll definitely keep an eye out and kind of see how everything kind of starts to transpire. But I kind of want to change gears a little bit and kind of jump into some minor league news.
Right.
Just a few weeks ago, the Atlantic League made some. They've partnered with Major League Baseball to experiment with rules. Of course, there's the whole talk about bringing the mound back a foot and making the bases bigger and all that stuff. But the Pioneer League is partnering with Major League Baseball as well to implement some new rules, to install some new rules. Now, these rules, I actually like these rules. I think these are going to be great, and we'll see at least a couple of these in the major leagues in the next couple of years. But one of the rules, there's about 4 different rules that are kind of going to instill this season. And one of them is called the knockout rule. So basically what this rule is, when a game goes into extra innings, there's going to be no more extra innings after that. So it stops at the bottom of the ninth. What's going to happen next is each team is going to designate a batter, and they're going to have a sudden death home run derby, essentially.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be.
That's kind of like the part of you goes, that's a really cool idea as a fan. And the other part of you goes, well, they're just going to sit there and hit long balls. I guess it could be, and are they going to count the long balls?
So,
somebody has a really long, like you think about, exit angle, velocity, and number of feet, right? And you think about the StatCast stuff, right? And you think about like, well, how are they going to? Is it going to count because it's an extra innings long ball, right?
So what it is each player will get five. We'll get 5 pitches to try to hit a home run. So, and whoever or whatever team hits the most wins that game. Now, if for instance that both players say each hit 2 apiece, it's kind of similar to a shootout in hockey or in soccer.
Exactly what it's like.
That's
exactly what it's like.
You go through the game and then you go into your extra time or overtime and you go to the shootout, and that's exactly what this is going to be. And if it's tied, then another batter comes up and it keeps going until one team out homers the other team. But you take away the pitching aspect and the strategy, the runner on second or whatever, and you have fun with this. I think this is fans are going to enjoy this. I really think this is what Major League Baseball needs to do to bring more excitement to the game, because yes, we do have our traditional fans like you and I that we want the 9 innings. We want, the extra baseball. That's always fun, but you've got a new generation and a new dynamic of people that may not be so tuned into the game like we are, that are watching it now and think, well, this game's kind of boring. There's something else.
Well, a lot of people have said that to me over the years. How do you like baseball? It's a boring game. I'm like, well, if you understand the game, you start reading more about stats and analytics. And I just like when I watch it, I just get plugged into it. I don't know why. Maybe it's my mind. I don't know. But I watch a baseball game and I see what's going on, right? I think when I see this home run derby idea, I see why they're trying to do it. As someone whose primary sport growing up was the NHL, and then they didn't have shootouts, and they had ties. And then they brought in shootouts. I was always on the fence about shootouts because sometimes there are games where, and totally different sport in hockey, but some games where you're like, there's no way this team deserves to win, and they win in a shootout, or teams use the shootout. And yet when I saw a game that was 5 minutes overtime and it went into a tie, it was exciting.
Yeah.
Because 2 teams both played really well, and it's like, this is too close to call. Baseball's different, but if it's a really great pitching duel and it goes to the bottom in the 9th and it's tied, even if your starting pitcher's not there, and then guys are hitting long balls, it's like, oh, okay. So they just, and you get 5 pitches, and it says it's exactly like the shootout. They get 5 tosses, and it's like, are you going to throw regular hard pitches at them, or are you throwing soft tossing at them, like they do in the home run derby in the All-Star game, or is it like you're going to get a guy on the mound who's going to throw, like, I'm going to throw hard at you, and if you're going to hit a home run off me, right, like it's going to be, like you're going to have to hit it.
I think it's going to be similar to like batting practice or home run derby that you see at the All-Star game. I think that's where it's going to be, and you only get five pitches, that's it, and if you don't get all of them, hey, someone else is going to come in, and it's going to be interesting to see how this part of the game, how it's received, and I think it's going to be received great. So,
I don't want to pass judgment on it until I actually see it, and I just think of, I guess, in the context of the game of baseball and people hitting home runs, right?
Right.
And it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. Cooter's watching it right now. Baseball's like watching it in orchestra. It's an art, and some people are
completely agree. I love, pre-COVID, live music with an orchestra. I've seen a lot of orchestras and classical music, and that's sort of what I was getting at. It's like I watch the game of baseball and I like detail, I like stats, and I see how intricate it can be. And this whole concept, people ask me, how did you learn this about how many times I've heard this thing called manufacturing a run? What the hell is that if you don't really follow baseball, right? It's like, okay, guy gets on base with a walk, like he steals second, he advances to third on a fly out with no outs or a single, and then he scores a run, right? Like it's not like a traditional or there's hits, right? It's like you start moving runners with strategy like stealing bases and whatever else to basically get a guy across the plate.
Right, exactly.
So to me, that's orchestral, right? That's like, it's not just like step up to the plate, hit a single, step up to the plate, hit a home run, you're done.
Right.
Or, you get on base, and then when you start working the base paths, you're stealing bases, or you're, like you get caught in a run, it's.
It's definitely, especially, those that aren't really in tune to the game, that I can sit there, I can watch a game, and I'm glued into it. It's
agreed.
I see exactly what's going on. That pitch is, shouldn't have been called a strike. It's the defense, the double plays. It's all just it's like watching poetry in motion. That's how I look at it.
Well, another way to say it is strategy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, strategy is a part of the game of part of sport.
Right.
Right. And so, does the home run derby take away the strategy of a game in sport? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely something to consider, to think about. But one of the other rules that the Pioneer League,
yeah.
Man, I'm getting tongue tied. is
okay.
It's called the designated pinch hitter. Now, this one's and there's another interesting aspect to this is, so the way I can kind of understand this is, say you reached a portion of your lineup and you've got a pitcher on the mound that you want to try to compare the best with. So this hitter has the best numbers against this pitcher, but he's not actually in your lineup playing. So this guy can come off the bench and pinch hit for the scheduled batter that was supposed to come up, and say, he's gets on base and whatever. And after the inning is over, that pinch hitter goes back to the bench, and that player that he was pinch hit for comes back out onto the field.
Yeah, I saw that, and it's interesting because to me that was always the whole concept of a pinch hitter and a guy in the lineup is you pinch hit and that's it. Mm-hmm. And then you see it in baseball. Seen it recently where then you see all these position shifts, or this guy's into the game at right field because this pinch hitter came in, and so-and-so's moved to first base from the outfield, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So does that change the dynamic? I mean, the pinch hitter and the player movement that happens after can change the dynamic of the game. Right. But to be able to pinch it and then the player comes back, that's like, wow.
Yeah.
That's yeah, it's like these seem like more drastic changes than some of the other stuff we've seen with the 7-inning doubleheaders or things like that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting when you think about it. And to kind of add a new little twist to that is now there's going to be a designated pinch runner, which is similar to the designated pinch hitter. But this guy can come in off the bench, and if, say, your catcher, your least speed guy on the base path, and you've got a guy on the bench that's got speed, so the catcher can come out and the pinch runner can come in, and whatever happens throughout the inning's over, that pinch runner goes back to the bench, and your catcher comes back out onto the field. So definitely some different dynamics that we might be witnessing here in the next couple seasons that are very interesting rules that I don't necessarily think will be appealing as the home run derby thing, but it's one of those things that, like we were kind of talking about, it kind of boils down to strategy, what these teams are going to be able to do. And, you know, having a player come in off the bench and then having that player who it's all confusing, but it's interesting to kind of see how this will kind of take shape in the Pioneer League.
Yeah, and how many fans will, like we said, revolt. I wouldn't call myself a traditionalist. I'm open to stuff, but watch baseball for a long time, and how many people will walk away from the game with these rules if they come into the major leagues and they really start to affect the outcome of games. It's neat to try it, but my thing was in hockey, it's like I would watch an NHL game with a shootout, but unlike soccer, if the NHL playoffs or the Stanley Cup was decided by shootout, I probably wouldn't watch it.
Right.
Right. The same thing in baseball. I don't know if I'd want to see in the World Series a home run derby.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Right. I mean, you have pinch runners and pinch hitters in the World Series, and sometimes it affects a game, or there's an outcome that's interesting because of that strategy dynamics of bringing a guy off the bench just to hit.
Right.
Right. And I believe that would be the Kirk Gibson home run in the '88 World Series. Yeah. Look what happened there. Right. I mean, he comes off and he's hobbling. He's got a broken leg and he hits the ball. And he's not playing in the game, and then how it affected the outcome of the World Series, right?
Right.
And I see these rule changes, and I go, okay, well, like I said, I'm open to trying them, but sometimes I'm just like, how are they going to pull this off?
Yeah. And that's interesting that you brought up the postseason in the World Series. If this actually makes it to Major League Baseball. You got a Game 7 of a World Series. The game is tied, bottom of the ninth. Are you really going to chalk this up to a home run derby to see who's going to be your World Series champion?
No, I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so. And even a playoff game, especially if it's a playoff game where you got a 3-game series, or you got the NLCS championship or the LCS, decided by a home run derby. It's just like that team gets to go to, or really any playoff game, right? You advance from the divisional to the NLCS or ALCS, or to the championship series to the World Series.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's like you want to see games where, there's exciting hits or pitches or exciting plays in a playoff game decide a game rather than, these kind of rules.
Yeah, definitely something to think about. And kind of one of the last ones, real quick, is called the revised check swing rule. Now this one's really it's more of like a formality, because the pitcher and the catcher can rule or get an appeal, on an umpire on whether or not the batter, did he swing through the plate or not. So they can kind of get a ruling, and now the batter can actually appeal a check swing. So that's not really a whole lot of, doesn't bring anything fun to the game, but it's just one of those rules that they're putting in there. So, but definitely some interesting rules.
Yeah, I saw that too. Like, I guess, the batter doesn't have the ability to appeal, right? Like, it's like the catcher and pitcher, and it goes to the first base umpire, does it not? Or I guess it goes to replay too, doesn't it? Sometimes with the strike.
I think it goes.
I'm trying to remember. Sorry.
I think it goes to the umpires. So it goes to the first or third base, whichever one has the best view of the plate and the swing. Yeah. But I don't think it's actually reviewable for instant replay. But now
But it's interesting if the batter can appeal it. Like, is that going to slow down the game, or are they trying to make the game more like? I guess can a catcher challenge a pitcher appeals, and then what happens? Do they overturn the call, or is it like what if the batter, can the batter object to? I guess not. They can't object to a pitcher or catcher appealing it, right? It's really, it's like I guess a hitter can do it. They can say no, I challenge the.
Yeah, because I mean, when you look at it like in today's game, a batter can actually, say catcher's interference. A batter can actually say, "Hey, I hit his glove," and that's reviewable. So he has the option to do that, but he doesn't have the option to appeal a check swing, which is something definitely I always thought that they can do, but obviously they can't and in the major leagues. But they can do one thing but not the other. So it's interesting. But I just always thought that the batter had the option as well. So
yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
So, but yeah, a lot of good things that the Pioneer League is kind of starting to roll out. Some good things, some ones that kind of make you scratch your head a little bit. Now that we kind of discussed it, and you kind of bring a little bit more perspective as to if this actually makes it to the major leagues. What's going to happen come postseason time. Some things that they're going to have to question and figure out. But that's why they're trying it in these independent and minor leagues first, so they can kind of work out the kinks.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast just to add to where they were talking about this, and they're saying how like you're making all these rule changes to make the game better, faster, but really, what do you want to do? You want to have star players in the game, and you want to provide entertainment. And are these rule changes guaranteed to create better entertainment value? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of debate about the rules implemented last year, whether they did or not. Right. People say, "Oh, it's not baseball." It's like, okay. Yeah. So it's just one of those things. People don't like it because it's changed, and then after a few seasons, they kind of go. They just forget about it.
Right. Exactly. So one of the last final things I kind of want to touch on. This is going to be a new segment of the show. Each week we put out a poll question that the listeners and the fans that can vote on, and we talk about the results on the last segment of the show. Right. So this week's poll question was: would you wear a jersey of a former player that used to play on your favorite team? Would you wear their jersey to the game currently? So 76% of the people said yes. 24% said no. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you: would that be something like, say for example, I only use him because I'm more familiar. So George Springer's no longer with the Astros; he's with the Blue Jays now. So if I were to go to an Astros game, I wouldn't wear his jersey anymore because he's no longer with the team. So if a former player, let's say for the Blue Jays, let's say if Vlad Jr. is no longer with the Blue Jays and you have his jersey, would you continue to wear his jersey at Blue Jays games, at home games?
That's a good question. I kind of think both sides, and I probably would. I guess if you're wearing a Blue Jays jersey and you're a Blue Jays fan, he was part of the team. I'd probably wear it. I don't know if I'd go out and buy another jersey because the player doesn't play there anymore. Right. The thing that I heard was it's bad karma to take the current player's name off a jersey. So if Guerrero was there, or Guerrero's still with the Blue Jays, but if you went the next season, he's gone. I mean, don't think that's going to happen, but if you go and you actually take his name off the same jersey and put another player's name on there, that's supposed to be bad karma. Oh, I think it's, for me, it's like, I don't want to spend it. Like I spend money on sports memorabilia in teams I like to wear, but I don't know if I'd be running out buying jerseys every time, especially if there's lots of player movement. Right. And especially if it's a player I liked when he was in a Blue Jays uniform. Right. Yeah. It begs the question: do you wear Jose Bautista jerseys for the Jays anymore, even though he doesn't play for him anymore? I don't know. I had the Blue Jays in the late 80s when I started watching baseball. So do I still wear a Fred McGriff jersey or a George Bell jersey or a Tony Fernandez jersey? And Tony Fernandez is a great example because he passed away, and it was pretty tragic circumstances of why he died. And he was a loved Blue Jays player by the fans. Right. So, do you commemorate a player like that? I don't know.
Yeah. That's a good question. It's a lot of different things. I didn't think about that aspect of it. It's it was just interesting because I went to Astros game last week. And
of course. And I remember you saying that. Yeah. And it's like George Springer's not playing there anymore.
And so looking around, I had an Altuve jersey on, and looking around, and I'm seeing Springer jerseys, and it's just kind of one of those things like, I wonder what other baseball.
Yeah, no,
fans.
it's a great question. It's just like, do you support the team, and you like that player when he was on the team, and players move around. That's what happens in sport, right? And it's
right.
It's like, do you just not wear that jersey anymore? But if you're an Astros fan, you love the jersey.
Yeah,
I don't know. You wear the jersey, right?
Yeah, that is a really good point. And maybe I might have to change my tune. So,
well, no, I think it's a fair question. I think a lot of people would respond. But if you're a George Springer fan, and what he did in an Astros uniform, and his time there is, for a lot of Houston fans, pretty special.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So to me, it's like, I don't know, would I stop wearing his jersey? Well, maybe I'm a George Springer fan.
Yeah, that is true.
It doesn't matter what team he plays for.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Very valid point. So, but yeah, just interesting poll question to kind of cap.
Great poll question. Great poll question.
Definitely, we'll come up with another one for next week. But Ben, that's pretty much all I got for.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Rip. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, but that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Be sure to check out the show on all the major podcast platforms, Apple, Google, or Spotify. And remember, the show is part of the Podcast City Network. So be sure to check out all the awesome shows on the network. And if you have a voicemail question, call in and leave a voicemail. There we go. I'll get that right eventually. But call into the hotline. It's number is 210-263-3253. So that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Rip Griffin Show. Make sure to subscribe to the show on all the major podcast platforms. Follow Rip on Twitter @RipGriffin2.